What's up guys, welcome back, and in this video I'd like to work on our API so we can persist our to-dos to a database. Up to this point we've built up our to-do app, discussed several ways of component communication, and now I think it's time to wire it up to an API built with Laravel. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's make a new Laravel app with the Laravel CLI. So Laravel new, let's call it to-do Laravel. Okay, that's done. Let's go ahead and go into that directory. And while we're here, let's make a new model called to-do. PHP artisan make model to-do, and -a is gonna make everything else. So a controller, a migration, and a factory. Okay, cool. Let's open this up in VS Code. I actually have an alias for opening it up. If you look at it, just opens it up using VS Code in the directory. And this is our Vue app. Our Laravel app is over here in the other window, which I'll put here. And let's go ahead and open our migration up. Shows to be in here, migrations, and this one should be it. Cool. And we just need 2 extra fields here. One for the to-do, I think I called it title, table text title, and one for the completed field. So table boolean completed completed, and we'll default that to false. Okay, now let's open up our environment file and set our credentials. For some reason VS Code can't find the normal .env file, although it exists in here, right there. That's weird. Okay, so database, username is root, password is root, and we'll make a new one called to-do Laravel. Let's go into SQL Pro and let's make a new one, to-do Laravel, and let's go ahead and migrate. PHP artisan migrate. Cool. Now let's go back to our code. Let's go into our model, so to do, and let's just set the fillable field. Protected fillable. Let's just set those 2 fields. So title and completed, just so we can mass assign. Now let's go into our routes API. So instead of routes web, like we usually do, we're going to go to routes API because we're making an API here. And let's make a new one for, let's start with index. So it's going to be a GET request to, let's make the endpoint to-dos. And then let's call it to-dos controller at index. And we don't need the name here because this is just an API, so we can't reference it by name. And why is it underlined? Oh, okay, it's just formatting. And let's go into our controller. You can see Laravel named it to-do controller, singular. I like to have it plural, so let's go ahead and change that. Where is it here? I'll just do it through the command P. To-dos controller, and then rename file. Okay, that didn't work. Let's do it through here. Rename to-dos controller. And for index, all we have to do is return to-do all. You can see to-do is already imported, so we should be good to go. Alright, so I'm going to use Postman to play with our API here. And I'm using Laravel Valet, so I already have a web server that's running. If you don't use Laravel Valet, you have to do like PHP artisan serve and use that URL. But for us, if we set this up correctly, let me just close this. Let's make a new one. So HTTP todo Laravel /API /todos, and get request. See if this works. Oh, .com, sorry. .test, sorry. Okay, and there's our response. It's empty because there's nothing in there. So let's add one and see if it works. Let's refresh this. To-dos, let's add one from database, and completed is false. And we can set these two. We don't need these actually. Let me just set them. Cool. And let's hit this API again. And there it is. Cool. Now let's work on adding to-dos. So back to our code. Let's go back to our API routes. And let me just duplicate this. And now we're going to make a post request. Try to keep this as RESTful as possible. To-dos controller store is the method we're going to do that in. So create we don't need, and store is right here. Alright, let me just move this up, and let's get started with store. So we're going to let's do some basic validation in here. So request validate the title should be required and should be a string, and completed should be required and a boolean. And don't forget a semicolon. Let's also save that to a variable called data, and this will be populated if the request is successful. It'll be populated with the fields that were validated. And once it is validated, we could just we can create a to-do, create, and we'll just pass it in the data that was validated. Let's actually save that to a variable because we want to return it once it's successful. And why is my tabs being weird? Return a JSON response. We'll just pass in the to-do, and the status, we'll make it a 201, which is basically a 200, but it means that a resource was created successfully. So yeah, that should be it. Let's go ahead and go back into Postman, and let's change this to post. And we have to add a body in here, and we have to add a title, new title, and completed is, let's give it 0, which is false. Okay, so let's go ahead and try post. Cool, send, and that worked. Cool. All right, let's double check our database. Okay, yep, it worked. But now let's see if the validation works. So if we don't pass in a title, or if you pass in like an empty string, see if that works. And we're getting the Laravel page, so that's kind of weird. That's because Laravel doesn't know that we're performing an AJAX request because we didn't pass it in the proper headers. So Laravel is just redirecting you back, which is what it does when validation fails normally. So let's go ahead and pass some headers in here. Okay, so let's go to headers and scroll up, headers, and let's add a new one. I think there's a few that will work, but let's use application JSON and, sorry, accept, and the value is application JSON. Oops. Damn it. Application JSON. Okay. And now if we send that again, we should get the proper validation errors. And we do. There we go. So if we fix the body, another title, this should work. Cool. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Oh, there you go. Okay. Should have thought about that before. Alright, hope that's big enough. Cool. Okay, now let's work on updating to-dos. So back to our code, back to our API, let's make a new one. And this one will be a patch request. And to-dos slash to-do. And then we'll do to-do controller update. And then while we're in here, let's do one for delete as well. So route delete, and it's the same URL, but it's going to call destroy. Okay, back to our controller, and let's work on, we don't need show, we don't need edit. Okay, so update. So Laravel is already passing this in for us. Awesome. Let me just grab this. It's pretty much the same thing. Okay, so we are validating it, and we're not doing this anymore. All we're doing is updating it. So to do update the data. And the response now should be a 200. And let's see if that works. Go back to Postman. So it's to-dos slash to-do, which is the ID. So let's just grab one. Let's refresh. Let's change number 3 to something else. So /3. We are making a patch request. And let's change this to changed, and we'll change completed to 1. And let's send. And for some reason, it's giving us validation errors, even though we're passing in the body correctly. The reason for that is you just have to change this to this form of form encoding. Don't worry about this when we're in our JavaScript. Axios will take care of this for us. So hopefully this works now. Let's check our body. Oh, we gotta add it again. So title changed and completed is 1. Send it, and there you can see it changed and it's returning it to us. Cool. Let's double check in the database. There you go, it changed. Cool, so we know update's working. And let's go ahead and work on delete, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's just to do delete, and then we'll just return a response. Let me just grab this. We're just returning a message here. So deleted to do item, and 200 is fine. Okay, let's try that in Postman. Let's delete 3. And we're doing this again, and let's delete it. Delete it to do item. Let's check our database. 3 should be gone. And it is. Cool. So now we have a fully functioning API. Let's go into our front-end application. Back to code, but I have it here. And the first thing I need to do is install Axios, which is what we'll be using to make AJAX requests. Let me just stop my app, npm install Axios, save, and let me just run my app again. Okay, so back to the browser. Here's our app. Let me refresh, make sure everything's still working. Cool. Okay, so now let's work on wiring up the API. So I'm going to be doing it here where we left off in the last video, but if you're just doing it from like the first video, just add everything within the to-do list.vue file, and that should work as well. Alright, so just put the store here, and let's just import it here. Import Axios from Axios, and we can set our default base URL because we're going to be using that often to make AJAX requests to the different routes. So axios.defaults base URL is whatever our endpoint is. So it was to do laravel.test/API. And the first thing I want to do is just to see if we can get an AJAX request working in the browser. So down here, let's just put an Axios request. So I just want to see if an Axios request goes through once I press this button. So let's just do, let me move this up. Okay, so Axios.get, and the endpoint is /todos. We don't have to put the full URL because we set the base URL. Then, let's indent that, response, and let's just console log the response. And let's catch any errors. And console log the errors. Okay, cool. Let's see if this works. I am expecting it to work, so let's open up our console and let's see if it's good. And we are running into a CORS error. So our browser is trying to protect us to make cross-origin resource sharing requests. Since our domains are different, we have this for localhost and we have the to-do laravel.test for the Laravel API. Our browser would not let us do that. So we can fix this in a few ways. We can install a Chrome plugin that ignores this because it's just Chrome protecting us. As you can see, we were able to make requests in Postman. But let's go ahead and fix it the proper way, which is to install a CORS package on our server side. Let's go back into Laravel and let's just install this popular Laravel CORS package, and this should fix our problems. So let's do composer require, and this is the Laravel one. Okay, that's done. Let's see what else we have to do. We have to allow CORS for all your routes, add this middleware in app kernel, app HTTP kernel, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. HTTP kernel. So it goes into the middleware property, so right here. Okay. What else? We need to do that. Okay, this is if you want to publish the config. We're not going to change anything in the config, but let's go ahead and put it in our project anyways. So there's a new file called cores. And this is where you can specify the allowed origins and all of the configuration options for this library. We're just allowing everything now, so yeah, that should work now. So let's go ahead and go here. Let's try this again. So do this, clear completed, and now we are getting back, if we look into the data property, let me open this. And there is our to-dos. So we have 2. Let's double check if it's correct. Yeah, we have 2. Cool. And you can see that we're also getting the created that and updated that. We don't need that. So in Laravel, we can go to the model and we can specify a hidden field. Hidden. So created that and updated that. We don't care about these fields. Let's double check. Here it is again. Data. Okay, so cool, it's gone. Okay, now, so initially, when we load our app, instead of getting it from our local to-dos array, we want to go out and make an API request, grab that info from our database, and then set it to our to-dos array. So let's go ahead and do that. So back to our front-end view, let's go to our main root component, the to-do list, and let's add a new created lifecycle hook here, created, and let's just dispatch an action. Now, if you're not using Vuex, you can just make the Axios Ajax call from here, grab our to-dos and set it to our to-dos array, but since we're using Vuex, we have to do it this way. So this store dispatch, and let's call the action retrieve to-dos. Okay, back to our store. Let's go ahead and make a new action called retrieve to-dos. Put it right here. So retrieve to-dos, and that only takes into context. And here is where we'll make our Ajax request. So let me just grab this. Don't need that anymore. And let's put in here. And when it's successful, so in this block, we can commit a mutation. So context.commit. Let's call this the same name, retrieve to-dos. And let's pass in, so response.data is our array. If you remember, it's not here anymore, but when we called an Ajax request, response.data is what we're interested in. You can destructure it in here too if you want, like this, but we won't do that. So in our mutations, let's make that method retrieve to-dos, and it takes in the state to-dos, and all this is doing is actually modifying our to-dos. Gets whatever comes in. So like I said, if you're not using Vuex, just make an Ajax call and do this directly from within the root component. And up here, let's just set this to empty. Just comment this out. And now, if I am doing that correctly, there you go. So this is from the database now. Let's double check. It is. Let's add one in here manually. Another one. Okay. Cool. Okay, so now let's work on adding a to-do. So let's make another action. Actually, we already have it. Yeah, we already have it. It's just we're doing a timeout here. Obviously, we don't want that. So let me just grab this. It's Axios call. And let's just put it on top for now. And now we're going to post to the same endpoint. And we're going to grab this. Actually, it's already there, sorry. Add to-dos, add to-do, and response that data. Cool. We don't need to set timeout anymore. And that should add. So hopefully it does. Let me just refresh this. Does it work? It does not. Let's take a look at our network tab and see what's going on here. So it's not getting the data. I think I forgot to pass it in. Yes, I did. So here, as a second argument, this should be the body of the request. So the title is, so it should be coming in here. So to-do.title. And when we're adding, oops, sorry, there should be a colon. And when we're adding, completed is false by default. Let's just pass it in manually. And that should do it. Okay. Does it work? Yes, it does work. And let's check our database. There it is. Cool. So let's go ahead and work on updating now, which is the same process. Where's update? Where do you have this? Don't need this anymore. Let me just move this out. We need that part. And let me just grab this. All of this. Okay. Move it up. Okay, so now this is a patch request. And the URL needs the ID. So let's go ahead and append that. So let's append the slash here. Let's add to-do.id. And title is to-do title, and completed is to-do completed. And this is now here. And there should be response data. Okay, let's see if updating works. Let's refresh. And I'll keep refreshing, I don't have to because of hot reloading. It's just a habit coming from the backend world. Now, I think it does work now. Let's double check. Oh, I didn't record it. Let me just refresh to make sure. It does. Cool. Again, double check the database. It does work now. Cool. Let's see if this works when you check it. Let's change this again. And change this to, you can see the requests coming in. I mean the requests going out. And doesn't work now. Again, should be completed in our database. There you go, it's completed. Now let's work on deleting So again, same process. Delete to do. Just take that out. Let's grab the Axios request, paste that in, delete to do's ID, and we do not need to send in data because all we need is the ID that we're deleting. Let's erase this. Just grab this, replace this, and we're committing, we're passing in the ID. Actually, this should be ID, not to do ID. And that should work. Cool. Let's double check. Let's delete this one, new title. Okay, that looks like it went through. Let's refresh. Let's check the database. New title's gone. And it is. Cool. Now, we still have to work on, let me just refresh this. I don't know why I just refreshed it. We got to work on the filters are fine because these are just local. So this doesn't affect the backend database. But for check all and for clear completed, these are bulk operations. So we can do this in one of two ways. So for check all, what we're doing is we are changing the completed status of everything here, either to on or off. So on or off. And we have to do that in bulk. So what we can do is either in our front end just loop over everything that's checked and send an update request and update it that way, which does add more requests. So I'm going to do it the other way, which is just to make one request in bulk, send over all the IDs, in which case it's all of them, in this particular case, and do it in bulk in the backend. And we'll take the same approach for clear completed. Well, where we'll just do it in bulk, pass in the IDs that are checked, and do it in bulk on the backend. So we need to go back into our backend. So let's go ahead and do that and make a new endpoint for updating all and for not all, but a bulk update and a bulk delete. So let's start with the check all. So here I'm going to make a new endpoint called todos check all. And I'm going to call a update all method, and same with bulk deleting. Let's make a new endpoint called todos delete completed, and let's call a destroy completed method. And I know this might be breaking REST rules, but I think it's more efficient than looping over and making a separate request for each entity. Okay, back into our controller. And let's start with the update all. So I'm going to make a new one. Okay, my snippets aren't working. Public function update all. Take in the request. And let's validate it again, but we only need the completed field. So let's take this out. And to do a bulk update in Laravel, you can just do this: to do query update the data. So that's going to perform a bulk update on every to-do item, which is what we're doing because we're checking. We're either checking everything or unchecking everything. So that should do it. And this is return a response. Let me just grab this. And this should be just a message updated. Cool. And let's just go ahead and do the destroy completed one as well. Let's grab this. So destroy completed. Okay, so this is going to take in an array. Let's just grab the request. And I'm going to validate it again. I just need this. So what am I doing? I'm going to make sure that we're going to pass in a request variable called todos, and it's going to be required, and it also has to be an array. So we'll make sure we're passing an array from the front end, and it will automatically get converted to a PHP array once we send that in. And that's going to be an array of the IDs that are checked, because for clear completed we can check the ones we want to complete clear. So once we have that array, we can just do todo destroy. So again, in Laravel, if you want to bulk delete, you can pass in an array with just the IDs you want to delete like that. So the array is coming in from the request, and it's called todos. So that should do it. And the response is fine here. Let me just say deleted. Okay. So back to our front end. Let's go to our action, which is check all. Here it is right here. And again, we're going to need this. So let's just pull this out. And let me grab just grab this one. Okay, so check all is going to be a patch request. The endpoint is todos check all, like that. We don't need the ID, but we do need to pass something in. And what we're passing in is just completed, and it's already coming in through the parameter here, and just set it like that. Then response is context commit, just right here. Okay, let's see if that works. Oops, so back to our database here. So right now, the first one is unchecked, and these two are checked, obviously. So 001, if I check all, they should all be checked now. So they should all be 1. They are. And if I uncheck all, they all should be 0. And they are. Cool. Okay, so now let's work on clear completed. Okay, so down to clear completed. Let me just take this out. Okay, let me just grab this delete up here. Paste that in. Okay, so we're going to make a request to todos delete completed. We don't need the ID, but we do need some data to be passed in. Now the syntax is a bit different for delete to pass in data. If you recall up here, where we're making a post request or a patch request, you just pass it in as the second parameter, whatever data you need. But for delete, it's almost the same. I don't know why it's not the same, but you actually have to pass in a data object. I don't know why. So you have to do data first before you pass in your actual data. So what's it expecting? If you go back to Laravel, you'll see that I'm looking for a to-dos variable. So let's do that. To-dos. And like I said, I want just an array of the ones that are completed to be passed in. And once that's complete, we can just grab this and put it in here. Okay. So let me just hard code it for now to make sure it works, and then we'll work on how to get this array to come in from our to-dos. So let's just check our database. So I have 1, 4, and 5. So let's delete 4 and 5. So let's put 4 and 5 in here. Oops. Okay, so when we test this out, it doesn't matter what we check because it's hard-coded right here. These two will delete no matter what. So let's just check them anyways. And clear completed. And they're gone. Let's check the database. Cool. So we know that works. Let's add a few more so we have some data to work with. Okay. Now, how are we going to get the array that we want to be passed in here? Let's just use some filtering and mapping on our array. It's not that hard. Let's call it a variable called completed. Completed. Okay, so const completed. So we're going to do some work with the to-dos array. And the first thing we want to do is filter it. And how do we want to filter it? We just want to filter the ones that are completed. So to do, we want the ones that are completed. So that's what we'll do there. And now we want to map over each one of those. And all we want to do is just return their ID. That's it. And now that should work. Let's test again. Again, I don't have to refresh, but I do anyways. Okay, so let's remove these two in the middle. Add few, and then that should work. Clear completed. It does. Just refresh to make sure it's the right ones, and they are. Just double check the database. Awesome. From database, another. From database, another. Cool, so we have an API and we've managed to hook it up to our front end. Let's see what else we can do here. I noticed here I put a set timeout on the update filter. So these actions, these are all local, so we don't need that. Just delete this. And that should still work. See if they still work. Cool, they do. Let's just give it one final test. Adding works. Obviously retrieving works. Let's check if this pluralize works. So, okay, so let's check the database if there's an S on them. And there is. And we have, oh, there we go. Okay, I thought that was a bug, but I was in the active filter. Cool. Yeah, I didn't put the S on this one because we were in this one, and the functionality only pluralizes whatever's in Vue. So that's cool. Working as expected. Check all. Actually, let's edit first. There's edit. That works. Check all. Clear completed, and they're all gone. Cool. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to make a Laravel API that can persist our to-dos to a backend database. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.